"What kind of selfish people are you?" My sister scoffed as she changed the lock on our house. We didn't argue. We just left for New Orleans. But when we came back, our house was full of strangers, and one of them made an offer we never saw coming. Every year on Thanksgiving, our house became the center of the family. For as long as I can remember, my parents, Robert and Linda, hosted the big Thanksgiving dinner at our home in the suburbs of Dallas, Texas. It was a sacred tradition. Uncles, cousins, and even close family friends arrived with trays of food, old stories, and even bigger expectations. I used to love seeing the house full, especially when I was a kid. I loved the smell of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie, the sound of laughter mixed with country music playing softly in the background. But in recent years it had become exhausting, and last year everything got out of control. My parents spent days preparing the house, cooking for over 40 people, making sure everything was perfect. But instead of gratitude, all they got were complaints. The food wasn't as good as last year. Uncle Richard's favorite wine was missing. The house was too cold. Mom didn't get to sit down for even a minute. Dad ended the night with a headache after hearing the same old comments. Things used to be better before. I saw it all. I saw my mother barely able to stand at the end of the night, my father picking up plates with a look of pure exhaustion. And when the house was finally empty, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "I don't want to go through this again," Mom murmured, leaning against the counter. Dad sighed. "We spend our lives organizing everything for everyone else. It's time we do something for ourselves." I was surprised to hear them say that. My parents had never complained about hosting Thanksgiving, not out loud at least. But this time was different. There was something in their tone that made me realize they meant it. The next morning, I saw Mom scrolling through vacation deals on her phone while drinking her coffee. Dad was at his desk, looking up flights. And before I could even process it, they announced it. "This year, we're not hosting Thanksgiving." "What?" My sister Jessica nearly dropped her mug. "What are you talking about?" "We've decided to take a trip to New Orleans during that time," Mom explained calmly. "We need a break. You can't just cancel Thanksgiving." Jessica shot up from her seat like she had been personally insulted. "It's a tradition. You can't just stop doing it." I stayed quiet. On one hand, I understood Jessica. That dinner was important to her. But I also saw my parents, the exhaustion in their faces, the way their hands reached for each other under the table. "Jessica, we've done this for years," Dad said. "But we don't want to anymore." She laughed in disbelief. "It's just one day. You can't be this selfish." "It's not just one day," Mom cut in. "It's weeks of preparation, days of exhaustion, and then days of cleaning up. We don't want to do it anymore." Jessica looked at me and our older brother, expecting support. My brother just shrugged. "If they don't want to do it, then don't do it," he said, uninterested. But Jessica wasn't giving up. "This isn't right," she insisted. "The family is counting on you. The family can make plans without us," Mom said firmly. The silence at the table became heavy. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, feeling the tension grow. Jessica wasn't the only one who was upset. Aunt Margaret wrote in the family group chat that it was such a shame to see how family values are disappearing with this generation. Cousin Daniel said, "No one makes food like Aunt Linda. Leaving us without Thanksgiving dinner is just unfair." But not everyone was against my parents' decision. "I think it's great," said Uncle Edward. "It's about time you took a break." "Exactly," added Cousin Natalie. "If someone wants to host, they should volunteer." I glanced at my parents. Mom sat up straight, but I could see her fingers nervously playing with the edge of her cup. Dad, on the other hand, looked determined, though I knew deep down, the family's words weighed on him. "Do whatever you want," Jessica finally said, crossing her arms. "But let's see what everyone thinks when the day comes." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I knew she wouldn't let this go, and my parents knew it too. The days passed in deceptive silence. Mom made coffee as usual, Dad read the newspaper, and everything seemed normal. Too normal. Like we were all walking on a tightrope, waiting for someone to cut the rope. And then someone did. One afternoon, Mom set her phone down on the table with a sharp thud. Her face turned pale. She tapped the screen several times as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, without looking up, she murmured, "No, no, this can't be happening." Dad stopped stirring his coffee and stepped closer, frowning. Mom didn't blink. She just stared at the screen, as if the words in front of her made no sense. "What's wrong?" he asked. She scrolled through her messages, one after another. I leaned in to look, and a cold knot formed in my stomach. "Thank you for the invitation, Linda. It's going to be wonderful to gather at your home again this year. I can't wait to see everyone." It was a message from Aunt Margaret. But it wasn't the only one. Cousins, uncles, even family friends were all thanking my parents for their hospitality and confirming their attendance. "What do they mean, 'Thank you for the invitation'?" Dad murmured in disbelief. Mom didn't need to answer. I already knew. "It was Jessica," I said, my blood boiling. Dad set his mug down on the table a little too forcefully. Mom sighed, staying calm as she dialed Jessica's number. After a few rings, my sister answered, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Hey, Mom. What's up?" Mom didn't waste time. "Explain to me what this means. We're getting messages from everyone thanking us for an invitation we never sent." Silence. Then a small, nervous laugh. "Mom, don't be so dramatic. What's the big deal about everyone getting together?" I just sped up the inevitable. I clenched my fists, my anger rising. "Tell me this is a joke. Tell me you didn't actually have the audacity to organize everything behind our backs and expect us to go along with it." Jessica sighed, pretending to be patient. "Don't look at it that way, little brother. I'm just helping the family. Are you really going to deny them this tradition?" Dad closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to contain himself. "What do you mean, organized?" he asked in a neutral tone. Jessica hesitated for just a second. When she spoke again, her tone had changed, as if she suddenly realized her plan wasn't working. "Well, since I knew you guys would eventually agree, I went ahead and told everyone. The food is already ordered. Cousin James is bringing drinks. Grandma will be there first thing in the morning. Oh, and some relatives will be staying overnight at the house." Mom pressed her fingers against her forehead, rubbing it like she had a headache. "Jessica, we have been very clear. There will be no Thanksgiving dinner this year." Silence. Then Jessica's voice turned ice cold in an instant. "If you don't want to do it, fine. But don't think this is over. Let's see who's right in the end." And she hung up. Mom and Dad exchanged a quiet look. Dad simply took another sip of his coffee, completely unfazed. "So what now?" I asked. Dad gave me a calm smile and said, "Now we go on vacation." Without another word, Mom opened the family group chat and typed a clear message. "Dear family, we're sorry for the confusion, but we are not hosting Thanksgiving this year. We're taking a few days off for ourselves. If you'd like to gather elsewhere, please do, but our home will remain closed." The message caused an immediate stir. Some replies were understanding. Others, like Aunt Margaret's, were veiled criticism disguised as concern. "It's a shame, but I understand that you're tired. Still, it will feel strange without you." It didn't matter. My parents had made their decision. The trip was booked. The bags were packed. In just 2 days, my parents would finally board that plane and escape the family madness. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Jessica was too quiet. She didn't argue anymore. She didn't send any more passive-aggressive messages in the group chat. She didn't try calling Mom to guilt-trip her. Nothing. And that worried me, because if there was one thing I knew about my sister, it was that she never gave up. The day before the trip, while Mom went over her to-do list one last time, Dad zipped up the last suitcase with a satisfied smile. "By this time tomorrow, we'll be sipping cocktails in New Orleans, without a single worry. Only if we make it to the airport without any issues," Mom replied, not even looking up from her notebook. I wanted to share her optimism, but deep down, something in me screamed that this wasn't over. And, of course, I was right. That afternoon, As Mom and Dad sat at their hotel in New Orleans, enjoying their first glass of wine on a balcony overlooking the lively streets, Dad's phone buzzed on the table. Who could that be? Mom asked with a relaxed smile. Dad picked it up and frowned at the name on the screen. It was Mr. Johnson, the neighbor from next door. What does that old gossip want now? He muttered, swiping to answer. Robert, I don't want to meddle in your business, but are you hosting a party at your house? Dad raised an eyebrow. What? No, Johnson, I already told you. We're not home this year. Well, someone is, the neighbor said gravely. I saw your daughter this morning with a locksmith. She changed the locks on your house. Mom, who had been savoring her drink, nearly choked. Dad shot up from his chair. Excuse me? Yeah. And after that, she showed up with some friends carrying bags and boxes. I didn't want to alarm you, but it seemed strange. Dad wasn't even listening anymore. His fingers flew over the screen as he dialed Jessica's number. She picked up on the second ring. Dad, what a surprise. Shouldn't you be enjoying New Orleans? Tell me you didn't do what I think you did, he said, his jaw clenched. From where I sat, I could hear her voice, calm, almost amused. Don't overreact, Dad. I'm just making sure everything goes smoothly tomorrow. Goes smoothly? You changed the locks on my house. Our house, she corrected. The family home. Mom turned to me, eyes wide with shock. I was frozen. Dad ran a hand over his face. Jessica, listen to me carefully. You are not throwing any party in that house. We are not in Texas, and no one has permission to be there. Dad, everything is already planned. The food, the decorations. You can't just throw the family out. Jessica, this is our home, and you do not get to decide what happens here. Your home, but a tradition for all, she said, her voice growing colder. Do you really want to be the selfish ones in the family? Dad was seconds away from exploding. Jessica, cancel everything or I promise you, you'll regret it. She let out a light laugh. Sorry, Dad, but it's too late to cancel. See you tomorrow. And she hung up. Dad set the phone down on the table, staring at the screen as if he could burn a hole through it. Mom exhaled slowly and took another sip of her wine, but her hands were trembling. Tell me this is a joke, she whispered. It's not, Dad muttered. I leaned over the table, trying to process what had just happened. Jessica hadn't just disobeyed them. She had literally taken over the house. And tomorrow, while my parents strolled through New Orleans, her little family gathering would turn into something much, much worse. This wasn't just manipulation. It was war. After the call with Jessica, silence fell over the hotel balcony. Mom and Dad just stared at each other, still trying to process what they had just heard. Dad rested his elbows on the table and took a deep breath. There's nothing we can do right now, he said quietly. Mom nodded, staring blankly at her wine glass. I watched as Dad picked up his phone and powered it off. Mom did the same. You're not going to do anything? I asked, shocked. Dad shrugged. If she wants to play this game, let her. We're staying here and enjoying our vacation. Mom exhaled tiredly. We'll deal with whatever happens when we get back. And that's exactly what they did. They chose not to respond to any messages, ignored every attempt to contact them, and focused on enjoying New Orleans. But the peace didn't last long. On their third night, Dad's phone started vibrating nonstop. Mr. Johnson was calling again. Robert, what the hell is going on at your house? Dad frowned. What do you mean? It's a madhouse. Loud music, lights on all night, cars parked all over the street. It looks more like a nightclub than a home. My stomach dropped. Dad shot up from his chair. No, this can't be happening. Mom grabbed her phone and opened social media. Her face went pale. Oh my God! On her screen was a video of a party in our house. Strangers were dancing in the living room. The kitchen was packed with bottles of alcohol. And the worst part? In one of the Instagram stories, someone had written, "Amazing house. Huge thanks to our host, Jessica, for making this happen. If you need a room, DM her." Dad clenched his jaw. Jessica hadn't just thrown a family dinner without permission. She had rented out our house to complete strangers. Mom, trembling, dialed Jessica's number. She answered with her usual smug tone. "Mom, what's wrong? Tell me you didn't turn our house into a damn hotel." Jessica laughed. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Mom. I'm just making use of the space. Besides, what does it matter to you? You're in New Orleans, aren't you? Enjoy yourselves." Mom nearly dropped the phone. Dad, his face red with fury, grabbed his own phone. "We're coming home tomorrow, and when we get there, that house better be empty." But Jessica just chuckled. "Oh, Dad. So predictable." And she hung up. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom buried her face in her hands. I turned to Dad. "What are we going to do?" Dad poured himself another glass of wine and spoke in a low, firm voice. "First, we sleep. Tomorrow, we'll see who gets the last laugh." But I had a sinking feeling that getting our house back wasn't going to be that easy. The flight back to Dallas was eerily silent. No one felt like talking. They landed early in the morning and, without wasting a second, headed straight home. But when they got there, they found the worst possible scenario. Cars lined the entire street, some even blocking the driveway. Loud music blasted from inside, and laughter spilled out onto the sidewalk. Dad turned off the engine and just stared at the scene, his face a mask of absolute disbelief. "This can't be happening," Mom whispered, clutching her chest. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Dad tried unlocking the front door, but the key wouldn't turn. "She changed the damn locks again," he growled. Mom, her hands trembling, dialed Jessica's number. After a few rings, she answered, her voice as casual as ever. "Mom, shouldn't you still be enjoying New Orleans?" Jessica, opened the door. "Right now. I can't do that." "What do you mean you can't? This is our house." "It's the family house, Mom. And the family is already arriving." Mom let the phone drop onto her lap, her lips trembling with rage. Dad slammed his fist against the steering wheel. "She stole our house." I stepped up to one of the windows and pulled the curtain aside just a bit. What I saw made my blood boil. The living room was packed. And not just with aunts, uncles, and grandparents who had come for Thanksgiving before, but with strangers, college kids, Jessica's friends, people I had never seen in my life. A group was in the kitchen, pulling bottles of wine from Dad's collection. Others lounged on the couch, their feet up on the coffee table like they owned the place. And in the center of it all, Jessica, standing there with a glass in her hand, laughing like she was the queen of her own kingdom. Dad clenched his jaw. "I'm calling the police." Mom immediately grabbed his arm. "We can't call the police. She's our daughter." "She's our daughter, but she broke into our house and turned it into a cheap nightclub," Dad growled, his eyes burning with fury. "If we let this slide, she'll never learn." Mom was breathing heavily, her eyes welling with tears. I understood her hesitation. Calling the cops on Jessica would cross a line we could never come back from. "Give me 5 minutes," I said suddenly. Dad looked at me, confused. "For what?" "I'm going in." "Absolutely not." "Dad, listen to me. If we call the cops, the whole family will turn against us. But if I can get Jessica to open the door from the inside, we can stop this without a scandal." Dad clenched his jaw. He didn't want to agree, but he knew I was right. Mom grabbed my arm. "Be careful." I nodded and made my way around the house. I knew this house better than anyone. I also knew that the garage window didn't always lock properly. I was right. I slid through the small opening, landing softly on the floor. I stayed still for a few seconds, listening. No one had seen me. I crept down the hallway toward the living room, my heart pounding. And then I saw her. Jessica stood just a few feet away, laughing with her friends, completely unaware of what was coming. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Jessica!" My voice rang out like a gunshot. Everyone turned to look at me. The music kept playing, but the entire atmosphere shifted. Jessica's smile froze. "What the hell are you doing here? This is my house. Are you really surprised to see me?" Jessica crossed her arms. but I saw her jaw clench. Don't be so dramatic, little brother. The family is happy, we're having a great time. Why do you have to ruin it? I took a step closer. What about Mom and Dad? Their decision? The fact that this is their house. She scoffed. Oh, please, do you expect me to cry over them? If they don't want to be here, fine. But that doesn't mean the rest of us have to cancel everything. I took a deep breath. Jessica, this has gone way too far. Open the door. She smirked mockingly. No. The anger burned in my throat. Do you know what Dad is doing right now? He's outside, calling the police. The laughter died. Her friends exchanged uneasy glances. Don't try to scare me with empty threats. It's not a threat, I said coldly. It's a fact. One of our cousins, Mark, stepped forward, looking nervous. Wait, did they really call the cops? Dad is already on the line with them. If you don't open this door right now, in less than 15 minutes, this place will be swarming with officers asking who has permission to be here. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others looked at Jessica, waiting for her reaction. She stood frozen. I could see it in her eyes. She was losing control. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. If the cops come, you'll be in trouble too. I smiled. No, because this is my house. You're the intruder. Jessica's eyes burned with fury. Her pride wouldn't let her admit defeat. But she had no way out. With a frustrated growl, she threw her drink onto the floor and spun toward the door. Fine. If you want to ruin everything, go ahead. She pushed past the crowd and unlatched the door. The second the lock clicked, Mom and Dad stormed in like a hurricane. But something was different. The living room was a disaster. Empty bottles scattered in every corner. Food spilled onto the carpet. Broken glasses on the floor. A random guy was passed out on the couch, oblivious to the chaos. And then, from the kitchen, a voice called out, "Are you the owners? We were told we could stay for a few more days." A complete stranger stood there, calmly sipping coffee. Mom covered her mouth in horror. Dad took a few seconds to process it. Then he exploded. "Get out of my house. Everyone, out." Panic spread. The family scrambled to grab their things, some muttering apologies, others too ashamed to look Dad in the eye. Jessica's friends disappeared in seconds. Jessica, however, stood in the middle of the chaos, her eyes filled with rage. "You took this too far," she hissed. Dad turned to her, his glare ice cold. "No, Jessica, you took it too far." She clenched her jaw, her hands shaking. Then, without another word, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. When the house finally emptied, a heavy silence settled over us. Mom collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Dad walked into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, downed it in one gulp, and said in a low voice, "Tomorrow we're changing the locks." I just stared at the closed door, knowing one thing for sure, this wasn't over. Jessica wouldn't give up that easily. She would be back. The day after the disaster, the house was completely silent. A thick, heavy silence, the kind that lingers after a war. Mom hadn't said a word all morning. She just cleaned on autopilot, picking up the remnants of Jessica's invasion. Wine stains on the carpet, broken glasses, shoe marks on the couch. Dad, on the other hand, wasted no time. First thing in the morning, he called a locksmith and changed every lock in the house. "It's over," he said as he supervised the work. "Never again." But deep down, I knew Jessica wouldn't stop. Her pride wouldn't allow it. I was proven right that same afternoon. At exactly 5 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat. I glanced at the screen, and a chill ran down my spine. Jessica had posted a message. "Well, family, now you see how things are. Mom and Dad have decided to cut ties with all of us. They'd rather live their lives without responsibility, without the burden of family. It's so sad that after all these years, they treat us like strangers." The replies came in within minutes. Aunt Margaret, "I can't believe they threw their own family out of their house." Cousin James, "Jessica, I'm so sorry. I know how important this gathering was to everyone. Grandma. I never imagined Robert and Linda would act this way. It breaks my heart. Mom, who was sitting at the table, lost in thought, noticed my expression and reached for her phone. When she read the message, she went pale. What is this? Dad read it too, his jaw tightening. This is garbage. But everyone thinks. Mom trailed off, setting her phone down and burying her face in her hands. This is a nightmare. Dad sighed, his voice calm but firm. Let her talk. This time, it won't work. And he was right. That afternoon, Dad and I went to his lawyer's office. Within an hour, Jessica was removed from the will. Her access to this house is gone, Dad declared as he signed the papers. And if she tries this again, we will call the police. Mom didn't say anything, but her face said it all. Jessica had broken something that couldn't be fixed. That night, the final piece fell into place. Dad drafted a message in the family group chat. Dear family, we understand there's been some confusion, but we want to make one thing clear. This year, we chose to take a break, and Jessica acted behind our backs. She entered our house without permission, changed the locks, and hosted an event without our consent. Some of the people who attended weren't even family. We will not tolerate this level of disrespect ever again. Anyone is free to believe whatever they want, but we have made our decision. The chat stayed silent for a while. Then the responses came in. Aunt Margaret. I didn't know Jessica changed the locks. This changes everything. Cousin James. Wait, she also brought strangers into the house? My God. We thought it was just a family dinner. Grandma. Jessica. What have you done? Jessica didn't reply. One by one, relatives stopped responding. Some even left the group chat entirely. Her plan had backfired spectacularly. Jessica had become the villain of her own story. That night, Dad poured himself a glass of wine, something he hadn't done in months. About time, he said with a small smile. Mom was still sad, but at least she wasn't as shaken. And for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. Jessica never wrote to us again. She disappeared from the group chat. But somehow we all knew she wasn't done yet, because some people never change.